Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Our next guest, Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How's it going today?
Doing great, Chad. Good morning.
Glad to have you on. I want to start off with the statewide stuff that's been making headlines just throughout the last few days, and obviously the talk has been really dominated by what they're going to do about property tax relief. We've got the reform. Now lawmakers are trying to figure out property tax relief. Matt, as a strategist, as somebody who, you're looking at what the voters want. You're trying to figure out also messaging for the Republicans. Did Republican lawmakers oversell the relief aspect of property tax reform and relief?
Yeah, I think there's a risk that voters will see it that way. Certainly people all across the state, urban, suburban, all geographic areas, feel pinched by this massive property tax increases that people are feeling year after year after year. And so if all the Republicans and their Democratic friends in the legislature do is constrain future increases, that doesn't help people who've been feeling 8, 10, 12, 14% annual increases the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so I think they probably maybe should have been a little more careful on the front end. I mean, the choice they faced was, are they going to put $4 or $5 billion into public education, or can they take part of that and apply it to property tax reform in a way where people can actually feel relief? And I think that's part of the reason why the governor put this tax swap on the table fairly late in the process with the support of the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker, was that they felt some pressure that they weren't actually reducing property taxes. They were just reducing future growth. They were limiting it to basically 3.5%, except for school districts where it was going to be 2.5%. I mean, that is an improvement. There's no question that's an improvement. But that's going to be an improvement for the future for people, and it's not going to help provide relief for the 8, 10, 12% increases that they've been feeling the last few years. And so they're scrambling now with whatever we've got, 20, 21, 22 days left, to try to see what else is out there. The tax swap, I think, is kind of hanging by a thread. It doesn't appear the votes are there, and I think the issue there is if you could guarantee that the revenue from the sales tax increase was going to go directly to property tax relief, you might have more Republican support, but that's not necessarily an idea Democrats are for, and I think I believe you're going to need 2/3 in the House to move the bill, and that's going to require a good number of Democrats. So they don't have the bipartisan support. The Democrats are very much opposed to the sales tax swap, and right now, some Republicans still have some questions. So I don't know what they're going to do. My guess is that they'll probably just stick with what they have, which is the limit on future increases, plus the significant boost to public education funding through the school finance bill, and they'll live to fight another day.
Yeah, let's talk about living to fight another day. I don't know how much you've even looked at some of these House races that are going to be coming up here very shortly. But Democrats, I think they announced last week they had identified somewhere around 12 to 17 vulnerable Republican House seats. That would very much flip the Texas House to Democrat. How worried should Republicans be going into 2020?
Yeah, and then there's also, the seats the Dems flipped last time, which, 8 or 10 of those, which are going to be, I think, in play for Republicans to get back. So, yeah, you're probably going to have a House playing field on the state side of, 18, 20, 22 seats potentially next cycle. And how those go, it's going to be important. Democrats need to take back, I think, a net of 9 seats to take back the House. This is a more important election, year than we normally have, because it's going to be the legislature that will pass the new maps for redistricting. So, if you have a Democratic speaker, I know that probably seems impossible to imagine, but if you had a Democratic speaker of the House in Texas, they would obviously have a very different approach to redistricting. So, generally, I think it's probably unlikely they'll take the House back, but, it depends a lot on the top of the ticket and the political environment. And so Democrats are certainly going to go after it. they're focusing on it. They're going to raise a lot of money, recruit candidates, and be very active. And so Republicans are taking it seriously. They have to. And I think as soon as this session wraps up, you're going to see, the candidates in those races, whether they be Republican incumbents or Republican challengers, really aggressively start working because the stakes are really high.
All right, let's take a look at the national scene. Some pretty good polling numbers for President Trump. I think a latest Gallup poll had him polling at around 46%, which, may not sound wonderful to everybody, but it's actually higher than where President Obama was at this point in his presidency. What do you think the economy right now, with it just continuing to churn, continuing to go really well? Obviously, no Russian collusion. And the polling numbers, when you account for all of that right now, how is Trump looking for 2020 in your opinion?
Yeah, I was asked this on Fox Business yesterday morning. I think as we sit here today, he's a 50-50 shot to get reelected. And given the headwinds he's faced, given some of the challenges, given how divided the country is, I think that's about as good as he could hope for. Obviously, there are huge variables. Will the economy be as strong 1 year from now as it is today? We obviously don't know that, can't know that. If it is, I think he has a very strong chance of being reelected. Obviously, putting the smaller stuff behind him, where the worst case scenarios didn't come to pass, that's really meaningful and important, and he's going to be able to continue to go after his enemies who targeted him. And now the Democrats seem hell-bent on continuing to fight the last war on this, and they're not going to let it die. There are some other huge questions. Who's the Democratic nominee going to be? If it's someone like Joe Biden, it's going to be a very close election. It could go either way. If it's someone like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, I think Trump will win decisively. And then issues like trade. Obviously, we've got to get this China stuff behind us. We obviously want to get a much better trade deal that affects the way they do business. It is much more fair to the United States, and that's a huge hurdle and a huge variable. But it's affecting the economy. It's affecting the agriculture sector, as you and your listeners know out in West Texas better than most. So there are some huge questions, but I think the fact that he's going to likely have a strong economy behind him. And whether it's Biden or not, I suspect their nominee is going to have taken positions on issues that are going to be well outside the mainstream, whether it's Medicare for all or Green New Deal or reparations or impeachment or whatever. I think he's got a good chance. I think the other thing that's really an underreported story is the Trump campaign, re-election campaign, is really doing well and kind of firing on all cylinders. There's no question that his 2016 presidential campaign was sort of kept together with bubble gum and duct tape. It wasn't much of an operation. They kind of pulled it together the last 2 months. But he's got a really professional group of people working really hard. They've already raised over $100 million. Their small dollar donor fundraising is going very well. They're going to be extremely sophisticated and advanced on digital. And as Brad Parscale, the campaign manager, said, they're targeting some other states like Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, New Hampshire. So they're going to try to expand the playing field. I don't know whether they're going to be able to. I think the election's going to come down to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, just like it did in 2016. But Trump's at least a 50-50 shot right now, and I think that's an amazing position to be in. The question is, can he build and can he grow beyond the base that he's stoked for the last 3 years? He's got to build beyond that into conservative Democrats and independent voters. He's got to do better with suburban Republican women. There's some areas where they've got to get stronger, and I think they have time to do that.
Yeah, visiting with Matt Mackowiak, Republican strategist. Matt, you also have a podcast, a very popular podcast out there. Tell folks about it, and also your newsletter.
Absolutely, thank you. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's in the iTunes Store. Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. I think that's it. MacOnPoliticsPodcast.com as well if you want to listen online. I think I said this last week, but our most recent episode is with U.S. Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, and we'll be interviewing Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas on Friday. So we'll have a new episode with him coming very soon as well. The newsletter, which I know you receive, and a number of statewide officials and members of Congress and lots of people are part of the group of 3,000 that receive it every weekday morning, is called Must Read Texas. We take all the news from around the state, put it in one clean, easy-to-read email, and deliver it to your inbox, usually by 9 a.m. You can get a free 1-week trial at mustreadtexas.com.
All right, Matt, as always, appreciate your time.
Have a great week. See ya.
You too. That's Matt Mackowiak.